My name is Brenda Mitchell. I'm 35 years old, and I built Horizon Couture from the ground up into a fashion powerhouse. Success is my reality now, but on the night of my sister's birthday, none of that mattered. Because the moment I walked into that party, I was treated like nothing. They pushed me into a corner right next to the gift table as if I didn't belong. Then came the smirk, the words that cut deep. I wasn't successful enough to sit with the rest. I didn't fight. I didn't raise my voice. I simply reached for my phone, typed one short message, and in seconds, I had the power to bring everything crashing down. 30 minutes later, the laughter had turned into chaos, and the celebration they thought would shine forever was already unraveling. And that right there was only the beginning. Do you think I went too far? Or was I finally right to take a stand after years of being pushed aside? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to spread this story so others can decide for themselves. One evening, my phone lit up on the kitchen counter, pulling me out of my thoughts. The name on the screen stopped me cold. Pamela Reed, my older sister. We hadn't talked in months, and our last call ended with her reminding me I'd never live up to the family's standards. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the decline button, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered. Brenda. Pamela's voice cut through, bright, but laced with that familiar condescension. I'm having my birthday party next month at the Crestview Hotel. You're invited. Her tone made it clear this wasn't a heartfelt gesture, it was an obligation. I stayed quiet, my grip tightening on the phone. It's on the 20th, 7 p.m., she added, and it's a big event, so don't embarrass us. I could almost see her smug expression, the one she'd worn since we were kids, always making sure I knew my place. I swallowed hard, keeping my response measured. Why me? Pamela. She let out a quick laugh, sharp and dismissive. You're still family, Brenda. Just show up and behave. She hung up before I could say more. I stood there staring at the blank screen, my mind churning. Family, that word felt like a lie. Growing up, my parents, dad and mom, always put Pamela first. She was their golden child, the one who fit their image of success, while I was the disappointment no matter what I achieved. I'm Brenda Mitchell, 35, and I run Horizon Couture, a fashion company I built from nothing. To the world, I'm a success, but to them, I'm still the kid who didn't belong. I sank onto the couch, Pamela's words echoing in my head. The Crestview Hotel was San Diego's hotspot for the elite, a place where deals were made over expensive wine. This party wasn't about celebrating, it was Pamela's chance to show off her perfect life and remind me I didn't measure up. I'd been to enough family events to know how it would go, sidelined, ignored, maybe a few pitying glances. There was the time at Dad's retirement party when they forgot to introduce me, or the gala where Mom waved me off to help with the coats. I was done being their afterthought. Part of me wanted to skip it to stay in my world where I called the shots. But another part, the stubborn part, refused to let them win. I'd built Horizon Couture through sleepless nights and relentless work. I wasn't the failure they thought I was, and I was tired of letting them treat me like one. If I went to that party, it wouldn't be to blend in. It would be to stand my ground, to face their judgment head on. I grabbed a pen and scribbled the date on a sticky note, my resolve growing. I wasn't sure what would happen at the Crestview, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to stay silent. The night of Pamela's birthday had come. I stepped out of my car, smoothing the lines of my black Horizon Couture dress tailored to command attention. My heels clicked sharply as I approached the Crestview Hotel, its entrance alive with the hum of San Diego's elite. I took a steadying breath, my resolve firm. This wasn't just a party, it was my chance to face the family who'd always pushed me aside. The ballroom buzzed with conversation glasses clinking and laughter from well-dressed guests. Men in sharp suits and women in glittering gowns filled the space, their confidence palpable. A staff member with a clipboard stopped me. Name, please, she asked, her tone brisk. Brenda Mitchell, I replied, keeping my voice even. She glanced at her list, hesitated, then pointed to the back. Your table's over there. she said, directing me to a small, lonely table tucked beside a stack of gift boxes wrapped in silver foil. My stomach twisted. The table was practically hidden with a single place card bearing my name. No one else was assigned to sit with me. I settled into the chair, gripping my purse tightly. The main tables up front were packed guests chatting and sipping drinks. Then I saw Pamela gliding through the crowd in a crimson gown, her smile sharp and practiced. She caught my eye and sauntered over, her expression cold. "Brenda," she said loud enough to turn heads, "you actually showed up." I forced a smile. "Wouldn't miss it, Pamela." She leaned closer, her voice cutting. "Let's be clear, you're not successful enough to sit with the important guests. That's why you're here." Her words stung like a slap, and a few nearby guests glanced away, avoiding my gaze. Pamela turned back to the crowd, her laughter sharp as she rejoined her circle. My face burned, the humiliation sinking in. I looked around, hoping for a hint of kindness, but then I saw Dad and Mom moving through the room. Dad's suit was crisp, Mom's pearls gleaming. I stood expecting some acknowledgement, but Mom's eyes flicked over me like I was a stranger. "Brenda," she said coldly, "don't ruin Pamela's night." Dad barely glanced my way. "Keep to yourself," he muttered before they joined a group of older guests who exuded wealth and power. I sank back into my seat, my hands shaking with a mix of hurt and anger. Their dismissal wasn't new, but it hit harder here, surrounded by strangers who didn't know my worth. I was 35, leading a fashion empire that dressed some of the biggest names, yet to them, I was invisible. The gift boxes beside me felt like a deliberate jab, a reminder of where they thought I belonged. I could have walked out, left their judgment behind, but something held me there. Anger, pride, or maybe both. I'd spent too long fighting to be seen, and I wasn't going to run now. Then I noticed a man join Pamela, his arm slipping around her waist. It was Stephen Brooks, her fiancé, tall, with a smug grin and an air of entitlement. They glanced at me, Pamela whispering something that made him chuckle. My jaw tightened. They thought they could humiliate me in front of this elite crowd, parade their superiority like it was a game. My fingers tightened around my phone, the sting of Pamela's words still burning. I couldn't just sit there swallowing their insults like I had so many times before. I stood up, my heels steady despite the anger coursing through me, and made my way toward the center of the ballroom. The Crestview Hotel's elite crowd parted slightly, their murmurs fading as I approached Pamela, who was laughing with a group of guests. Stephen stood beside her, his arm still around her waist. Dad and Mom were nearby, chatting with a couple in expensive suits. I stopped a few feet away, my voice calm but firm. "Pamela," I said loud enough to draw attention, "we need to talk." Pamela turned, her smile faltering for a split second before she regained her composure. "Brenda," she said, her tone dripping with mockery, "what's this about? Don't make a scene." The guests around us shifted, their eyes darting between us. I didn't flinch. "You think it's okay to treat me like I'm nothing?" I asked, my voice steady but sharp. "To shove me in a corner and tell everyone I don't belong?" Her eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, Stephen stepped forward, his grin smug. "Look, Brenda," he said, his voice loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "You're kind of an outsider here. This is for people who've actually made something of themselves." His words hit like a punch, and a few guests gasped, their whispers spreading. I turned to Dad and Mom, hoping for some defense, but Mom just shook her head. "Brenda, stop this," she said coldly. "You're embarrassing yourself." Dad crossed his arms, his face stern. "Pamela's right. This isn't your place. Go back to your table." Their words cut deeper than Pamela's, deeper than anything I'd felt before. My own parents siding with her, dismissing me in front of a room full of strangers. I stood there, my heart pounding, the weight of years of rejection crashing down. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. They thought they could humiliate me, reduce me to nothing, and walk away unscathed. I took a step closer to Pamela. My eyes locked on hers. "You've always done this?" I said, my voice low but carrying. You pushed me down to make yourself feel bigger. And you too? I turned to Dad and Mom. You let her. You've always let her. Pamela laughed, but it was forced her confidence cracking. Oh, Brenda, don't be so dramatic, she said, glancing at the crowd for support. You're just jealous because you'll never be on our level. Stephen nodded, his smirk widening. Exactly. Stick to your little projects and leave the real success to us. That was it, the final straw. I'd spent years building Horizon Couture, pouring my life into it, and they thought they could dismiss it as a little project. My anger turned to resolve, cold and sharp. I wasn't going to let them define me anymore. I looked at Pamela, then Stephen, then my parents. Their faces a mix of disdain and amusement. You think you know me? I said, my voice steady, but you don't. You have no idea what I'm capable of. The room grew quieter, the tension thick. Pamela opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off. I'm done letting you walk over me. You'll see what happens when you underestimate me. I turned, my heart racing but my steps deliberate, and walked back toward my table. The crowd's whispers followed me, but I didn't care. I'd spent too long shrinking under their judgment, trying to prove myself to people who'd never see my worth. My phone was still in my hand, and as I sat down, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to let their words break me, not anymore. They'd pushed me too far, and now they were going to face the consequences. I sat back at my corner table. My fingers moved quickly, pulling up a message to Nancy, my lead negotiator at Horizon Couture. Cancel the $5.5 million deal with Brooks Retail Group. Effective immediately. No discussion. I hit send, my heart pounding with a mix of defiance and satisfaction. Stephen thought he could belittle me, unaware that his company was banking on a contract with mine, a contract I'd just obliterated with one tap. I stood up, smoothing my dress, and walked toward the center of the ballroom. The Crestview Hotel's elite crowd was still buzzing, oblivious to the storm I was about to unleash. Pamela stood near the main table, laughing with a group of guests. Stephen at her side, his smug grin intact. Dad and Mom were nearby, nodding along to some wealthy couple's story. I stopped a few feet away, my voice clear and steady. Excuse me, everyone, I said, loud enough to cut through the chatter. Heads turned, conversations faltering. Pamela's eyes locked on mine, her smile freezing. I have something to say. The room grew quiet, dozens of eyes on me. I took a deep breath, my resolve unshakable. My name is Brenda Mitchell, I began, my voice carrying across the ballroom. For years, my family, Pamela, Dad, Mom, has treated me like I don't belong, like I'm nothing. Tonight, they made it clear, shoving me to a corner table and calling me an outsider. A few guests shifted uncomfortably, their whispers starting to spread. Pamela's face tightened, but I didn't stop. But here's the truth you don't know. I continued, my gaze shifting to Stephen. I'm the CEO of Horizon Couture, a fashion empire I built from the ground up. And you, Stephen, just lost a $5 million deal with my company because you thought you could humiliate me. The room erupted in gasps, murmurs rippling through the crowd. Stephen's grin vanished, his face paling. What are you talking about? He stammered, stepping forward. You're lying. I held up my phone, showing the sent message to Nancy. Check with your team, I said coolly. The contract with Brooks Retail Group is done. I canceled it 10 seconds ago. Pamela's jaw dropped, her eyes darting between me and Stephen. Brenda, what have you done? She hissed, her voice trembling with panic. Dad stepped forward, his face red. This is outrageous, he snapped. You're ruining everything. Mom clutched his arm, her expression a mix of shock and anger. How could you do this to Pamela? She demanded. I didn't flinch. You did this, I said, my voice steady but sharp. All of you. You thought you could push me down, treat me like I'm less and get away with it. Not anymore. The guests were whispering furiously now, some pulling out their phones, likely checking the news of the deal's collapse. Stephen fumbled for his own phone, his hands shaking as he dialed. This can't be real, he muttered, his voice cracking. Pamela grabbed his arm, her face flushed. Fix this, Stephen, she snapped, but he just shook his head, his eyes wide with disbelief. I turned to the crowd, my voice rising. I built Horizon Couture from nothing, while my family told me I'd never amount to anything. I'm done letting them define me. This is who I am, a woman who doesn't need their approval to succeed. The room was silent for a moment, then a few guests clapped, their applause growing louder. Others looked at Pamela and my parents, their expressions shifting from admiration to doubt. Pamela's face was a mask of fury, but she stayed silent. Her usual confidence shattered. Dad and Mom stood frozen, their authority crumbling in front of their elite friends. I walked back to my table, my heart racing but my steps firm. The weight of their judgment was gone, replaced by a sense of power I'd never felt before. I'd shown them who I was, and I wasn't done yet. The applause from the crowd faded, but the tension in the ballroom hung heavy. I stood by my table, watching the chaos I'd unleashed unfold. Pamela's face was a storm of fury and panic, her eyes darting between me and Stephen, who was frantically scrolling through his phone. "This isn't happening," he muttered, his voice shaking as he dialed a number. "Nancy, it's Stephen," he said, his tone urgent. "Tell me the deal's still on." I couldn't hear Nancy's response, but Stephen's face turned ashen, his jaw tightening. He hung up, staring at Pamela with wide eyes. "It's gone," he whispered. "She canceled it. The whole $5.5 million contract gone." Pamela spun toward me, her hands clenched into fists. "Brenda, how could you?" She snapped, her voice loud enough to draw more stares. "You're destroying everything we've worked for." Her words were desperate, a far cry from the smug confidence she'd worn all night. I met her gaze, unflinching. "You destroyed this, Pamela," I said coolly. "You thought you could humiliate me and walk away. Not this time." The guests nearby leaned in, their whispers growing louder, phones already buzzing with the news of the deal's collapse. Dad stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "Brenda, you've gone too far," he said, his voice low but sharp. "This is Pamela's night and you're making a spectacle." Mom grabbed his arm, her expression frantic. "You're tearing this family apart," she said, her voice trembling. "Why can't you just behave?" Their words stung, but I was done letting them hurt me. "Behave?" I shot back, my voice steady. "You mean stay quiet while you let Pamela treat me like dirt? I'm done with that." Before they could respond, a man in a sharp navy suit approached, his presence commanding the room's attention. "Brenda Mitchell," he asked, his voice calm but authoritative. I turned, recognizing him instantly. Edward Pierce, a prominent San Diego investor I'd met at a fashion summit last year. "It's good to see you again," he said, offering a warm smile. I didn't expect to find the CEO of Horizon Couture here, especially after that speech. He glanced at Pamela and Stephen, then back at me. "Your work in sustainable fashion is remarkable. We've been following your company's growth." The room fell silent, the guests' eyes shifting from Edward to my family. Pamela's face reddened, her composure crumbling. Stephen looked like he'd been punched, his phone still clutched in his hand. Dad and Mom exchanged uneasy glances, their authority unraveling. "You know her?" Pamela asked, her voice strained. Edward nodded, unfazed. "Of course," he said. "Brenda's a leader in the industry. Her designs are worn by some of the biggest names in Hollywood. I'm surprised you didn't mention it." His tone was polite, but the implication was clear. He'd expose their ignorance in front of their elite crowd. Pamela forced a smile, but it was brittle. "Well, Brenda's always been private," she said, her words faltering. Stephen tried to recover, stepping forward. "This is just a misunderstanding," he said, his voice tight. "The deal can be fixed." But Edward raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "From what I heard, that deal's dead," he said, glancing at me. "And knowing Brenda's reputation, I'd say she made the right call." The guests murmured, some nodding in agreement, their respect for me growing while my family's credibility sank. Dad tried to salvage the moment, his voice booming. "This is a family matter," he said, addressing the crowd. "Let's not blow it out of proportion." But his words fell flat, the guests' attention fixed on me. Mom pulled at his sleeve, whispering, "George, stop. They're all watching." Their perfect image, the one they'd spent years crafting, was crumbling, and I could see the panic in their eyes. For the first time, I felt the tables turn. They weren't in control anymore. I stood tall, Edward's words echoing in my mind. "Thank you, Edward," I said, my voice clear. "I appreciate your support." I turned to Pamela, Stephen, Dad, and Mom, their faces a mix of shock and embarrassment. "You underestimated me," I said, my tone firm. "And now everyone here knows it." I walked away, leaving them in the center of the ballroom, their whispers and stares following me. I'd done what I came to do. 3 days after the party, I sat at a corner table in a quiet San Diego coffee shop, stirring my latte, waiting for Pamela. She'd texted me the day before, her message short and formal. "We need to talk. Please." I agreed, not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I needed to say what had been building inside me for years. The bell above the door chimed, and Pamela walked in, her usual polish, replaced by a tense, almost fragile demeanor. She spotted me and approached her steps, hesitant, a far cry from the confident stride she'd had at the Crestview Hotel. "Brenda," Pamela said, sliding into the chair across from me, her voice softer than I'd ever heard. I didn't expect things to go so far. Her eyes darted to the table, avoiding mine. I stayed silent, letting her continue. "What happened at the party?" "I'm sorry, okay. I didn't mean for it to escalate like that." Her apology sounded rehearsed, like she was trying to salvage her image rather than genuinely regret her actions. I leaned back, my expression calm but unyielding. "Sorry for what, Pamela?" I asked, my tone sharp. "For humiliating me in front of everyone, or for thinking you could keep me in your shadow forever?" She flinched, her hands fidgeting with her purse. "I was wrong," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't know you were who you are." "The CEO thing, the deal. It caught us off guard." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean you didn't bother to know?" I said. "You, Dad, Mom, all of you decided I was a failure without ever asking what I'd built." Pamela's face tightened, but she pressed on. "We can fix this," she said, leaning forward. "Let's put the past behind us. Your family, Brenda. We don't have to lose each other." Her words hit a nerve, not because they were sincere, but because they echoed the same empty promises I'd heard growing up. Family. The word felt hollow after years of their dismissal. I thought of the times I'd reached out hoping for their support, only to be brushed aside. Pamela's apologies now weren't about me, they were about her fear of losing face, of dealing with the fallout from the party. I took a sip of my coffee, steadying myself. "Pamela," I said, my voice firm, "I'm done with this family. I'm done with your games, Dad's lectures, Mom's silence. You don't get to apologize and expect me to come running back." Pamela's eyes widened, her composure cracking. "You can't mean that," she said, her voice rising. "You're really going to walk away from us after everything I met?" Her gaze unflinching. "Everything I repeated." "You mean the years of being ignored, belittled, and pushed aside?" "Yes, I'm walking away, and you'll feel the consequences of what you've done." I leaned forward, my voice low but cutting. "Your perfect world is falling apart, Pamela. The party showed everyone who you really are. People are talking, and they're not on your side anymore." Her face paled, her hands trembling. "That's not fair," she whispered. "I made a mistake, Brenda. We all did." I shook my head. "A mistake is forgetting my birthday. What you did, what all of you did, was deliberate. You chose to treat me like I was nothing, and now you're paying for it." I thought of the whispers at the party, Edward's recognition, the way their carefully curated image had crumbled. Stephen's company was reeling from the canceled deal, and their social standing had taken a hit. They'd underestimated me, and it was costing them. Pamela opened her mouth to argue, but no words came. For the first time, she looked small, stripped of the superiority she'd always worn like armor. I stood picking up my purse. "This is the last time we'll have this conversation." I said, my tone final. "I've built my life without you, and I'm stronger for it. Goodbye, Pamela." I walked out of the coffee shop, the bell chiming behind me. A weight lifted from my shoulders, replaced by a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. They'd lost their hold on me, and I was ready to move forward. Months after walking away from Pamela in that coffee shop, I stood in my office at Horizon Couture's San Diego headquarters, watching the city's skyline through the window. My company had just landed a major partnership with a global retailer, a deal that dwarfed the one I'd canceled with Stephen's firm. The press was buzzing, calling Horizon Couture a trailblazer in sustainable fashion. I'd spent years building this empire, proving my worth to a world that didn't always see me. Now I was living on my own terms, free from the weight of my family's judgment. I hadn't spoken to Pamela, Dad, or Mom since that day at the coffee shop. The silence was liberating. I'd heard through industry contacts that their perfect world was unraveling. Pamela's social circle had shrunk, her reputation tarnished after the party. Guests like Edward, who'd once admired her, now spoke of her with pity, whispering about how she'd misjudged her own sister. Stephen's company, Brooks Retail Group, was struggling to recover from the $5.5 million deal I'd pulled. Investors had lost confidence, and his name no longer carried the weight it once did. Dad and Mom, who'd always banked on their status in San Diego's elite, found their invitations to exclusive events drying up. Their image, so carefully crafted, had cracked under the truth I'd exposed. I didn't gloat over their downfall, but I felt a quiet satisfaction knowing they were facing the consequences of their actions. For years, they'd dismissed me, called me less than, and assumed I'd never rise above their expectations. But I had. I'd built something real, something mine, without their approval. Every milestone, every new collection, every headline about Horizon Couture reminded me that my worth didn't depend on their validation. I'd learned to value myself not through their eyes but through my own. Nancy, my lead negotiator, had been by my side through it all. She'd handled the fallout from the canceled deal with precision, ensuring Horizon Couture came out stronger. Edward had reached out too, offering to connect me with new investors impressed by my resolve. Their support and the loyalty of my team showed me what real respect looked like. It wasn't about blood ties or social status. It was about recognizing someone's worth and treating them accordingly. Looking back, I realized the party at the Crestview Hotel wasn't just a turning point. It was a reckoning. I'd walked in as the sister they ignored, the daughter they underestimated, and left as Brenda Mitchell's CEO, a woman who knew her value. The lesson was clear: disrespect comes with a cost. Pamela, Stephen, Dad, and Mom learned that the hard way, losing the influence they'd taken for granted. I didn't need to fight them anymore. I'd already won by choosing myself. As I sat at my desk reviewing the latest designs, I felt a sense of peace. The past was behind me and my future was wide open. I'd built a life that reflected who I was, not who they wanted me to be. And that was enough.